Hello and welcome in to our Premier League review. Of course, 3 games kicked off at 9 o'clock in England today. We're going to focus on 2 of the main ones. Yanis Mihalik alongside me. Yanis, get ready for this link, Freddie.
Yep.
Great day to be at home and cozy. Of course, a big snowstorm in the States. However, it were the away sides that prospered today in the Premier League. Of course, we saw victories for all of those on the road. We'll focus first on Crystal Palace against Chelsea. Of course, a lot of talk, both sides, one manager leaving, a new manager coming in. Meanwhile, for Chelsea, for Rafinha, it's another victory. 3-1 against Palace. A good win, some questionable performances I think we'll talk about later, but let's just first focus on the positives. One of them, once again, very much, Esteval.
Yeah, I mean, every time he plays, he gives you that little something extra, that entertainment, right? Just a question of do they let him play more consistently, right? I know that sometimes you protect the players, but we've seen with Yamal in Barcelona that these players are eager, they can play. Obviously, you have to manage them to some degree, but it almost seems to me that Esteval perhaps is ready now for a longer run, regardless how he plays, because I think there's a tendency when he has a maybe not such a good game to pull him out and not start him the next game. So he seems ready to me. I mean, he was a handful, that's for sure.
And boy, don't you think the Premier League needs players like this, Yanis? A little bit of spark. They're not robots. There's someone you actually want to see play because you don't quite know what they're going to do.
That's right. That's why it's sometimes difficult for these players to get used to the Premier League, and maybe it does take a little bit of time. But I think Chelsea in particular need that sort of a player. Yes, I know Cole Palmer, when he's healthy, he's capable of doing that. But I've said it last week a little bit that Chelsea bores me. I had some messages about that from Chelsea supporters. I didn't mean it that negatively, but it is it was a team that really didn't excite me, and that's not what football's about. You got to win, and you see the pressure on managers, right? Maresca no longer there, and as you mentioned, Rossignol, that's I think 4 wins in 5 games.
Yes,
and that one loss wasn't bad to Arsenal. There's a rematch, so 3-2. So pretty good so far from him.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of resurgence as well from João Pedro since Rosinha's come in, obviously getting the 2nd goal today.
Yeah, I think the expectations were so high, right? Club World Cup here in the United States, if you remember, Chelsea, the world champions, and João Pedro seamlessly moving into that team and scoring left and right. And then, of course, you look at that, a couple games you don't score and we start questioning him. So I think he's a good player today. That goal that he scored was almost lazy-like, right? I mean, he was so composed on that goal.
And we saw, obviously, his shot was the one that gave the 3rd penalty, the penalty to get the 3rd goal. VAR took a long time. What did you make of this? VAR said it was accidental. That was only why it was a yellow card.
I mean, if it wasn't for Chalobah, remember a little bit later, almost identical, same distance, right? And Chalobah's arm was not in a natural position. This one was. It was close to his body. I get the loss because the ball's going, on goal and all of that. Remember, although not the same, but I don't know if you remember European Championships and Cucurella against Germany in that quarterfinal.
Yeah, of course.
Right? It wasn't so. I think maybe, I don't know if since then, these situations are looked at differently. I get it that if it wasn't for that arm, it would have been in the back of the net. Chalobah's perhaps, there's some question marks, but to me, those are, as a former defender, it's criminal. We can't be calling penalties for that. But I get it. Laws of the game.
Let's take a look at some other controversial decisions. Caicedo could have gone, for 2 yellows in the first half.
Yeah, Wharton, he's gone, right? And it was silly, but he could have. That second, that was a foul. Sometimes it's given. So I guess he kept his composure for the rest of the game, although he came off in the second half as well. But yeah, could have, should have. Yeah, I thought that he should have gone, Caicedo, and Wharton obviously as well. But again, sort of similar situations, right? Like with the handball.
Look, you go into this as a Palace fan. Your season is a disaster. You're starting to look at the relegation zone. If you're going to take one positive from it, is that a 3-0 and 10 men, you didn't roll over. There was some character there. There was some drive to try and get back in the game.
Yeah, but I just got a bad feeling that one goal certainly is not going to change how fans and players.
I'm trying to be optimistic here, Yanis, for Palace fans. It's not easy for them, I imagine, at the moment.
I'm worried about it because here we are, a team that wins the trophy and Community Shield to start the season. That's that may be going to the championship. I don't want to be too dramatic, dramatic about this.
Mhm.
There's still 8 points, but there are so many distractions, and you just get a feeling that Crystal Palace is going to have to act now, sooner rather than later, because I don't know how I feel about Glasner announcing this, right? Remember, Jurgen Klopp did that as well. It wasn't great. Players, I get it from the standpoint that he's been honest with them, gives them time, I suppose, to look at the manager. But these distractions, where he goes, right? And remember today, Estevao on that side, that's where he would have been playing, right? Wharton, red card, and I have a feeling that he's one of those players that a lot of clubs are looking at, right? So these players want to know. We're talking about 11 losses now, right? All competitions. This is a team that was 5th place just a month ago, and here we are, and they're waiting. If I'm correct, they're going to Forest, right? Who are 17th in the league right now. So there is that buffer, but when you have a situation like this, I think if you're Crystal Palace, you act, and you got to bring in a new coach just to change the culture a little bit.
It's tricky though, isn't it, Yanis? Like if you're someone like Adam Walton, we saw Mateta as well being linked away. What is driving you to stay?
Right. And, some of these players are going to have to wonder, right? Because they're not going to be waiting for a manager. They want to know who's going to be the manager. If you somebody like Mateta, if you're someone like Wharton, that is important. They already wanted to leave. They're staying, obviously, for now, because who knows what's going to happen. But what if? The window's still open, right? So this is a real problem at Palace. They have to make a decision. For me, Glasner's got to go.
Chelsea, is this squad strong enough? I think it's fair enough. They're going to finish top 4. They've shown us enough compared to other teams within the league that they are very much in a Champions League place for next season. Bigger picture, who do they need to bring in January, if anyone, or do you wait till the summer?
Yeah, I mean, defensively, they're a little bit all over the shop. A lot of it, rotation, a lot of it injuries. But, I don't seem to remember 2 or 3 games in a row where Chelsea had the same back four. Maybe listeners have me corrected here, but that's an area where I think you've mentioned that one goal. You saw the reaction of Sanchez, right? I mean, it is important to defenders. It is important to goalkeepers in an easy game like this, and that being easy because let's not forget Ismail Assar. I think 8th minute. Remember that, and then in the 26th minute, I mean, unbelievable chances for Palace to score. But I just don't feel confident with Chelsea's back four, and it seems that it's going to be a back four right now. So a lot of talent there, but maybe some form of leadership still needed.
Meanwhile, in the other game, when you think of Newcastle and you speak of them, you think, on the road, they've really struggled. But St. James's is a fortress. This is their 3rd defeat now at home this season, obviously against Arsenal, against Liverpool, and now Aston Villa. A great performance from Villa. Emi Martinez pulling off some fantastic saves. Newcastle should have really taken their chances. They didn't, and they were punished. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is fair, and that's the idea here. I mean, they've got to be finishing some of the losses that you've mentioned. I don't think, especially at home, they're short of chances, right? I mean, they've created enough to win this. Emi Martinez absolutely outstanding. The game was in the balance for sure. But just Villa, that midfield, especially in the first half, right? I mean, I look at Onana, who's missed, I think, 4 games, and you could tell, right, that he wasn't there. Easy, of course, for me to go into that midfield. Bruno Guimaraes wasn't there. That's a big loss when you're playing against the like of Tielemans, Onana, and Morgan Rogers, because that first goal, I don't know if you rewinded it, but I did a couple of times because it was just so wonderful, right? Little triangle, one-touch football. Buendia, the one that changed the point of attack, and of course that finish was tremendous. But to me, sometimes, the goal was beautiful, but how did it happen? And that midfield with Onana, who just, I mean, box to box, tackles, anticipates, makes it so much easier for the likes of Tielemans and Morgan Rogers to kind of, maybe push forward a little bit and take chances. So if they stay together, they stay healthy. Villa, unusual loss, right, last week, especially at home, because you're talking about the advantages of being at home, right? Newcastle, St. James's, same with Villa Park.
Especially when it's only Everton.
Yeah, against Everton. So, big bounce here. And again, I keep apologizing, Dan, you weren't here, but in the beginning of the season, I was very, very critical of Unai Emery in general. There's something about it that I was like, but I have to apologize because what he does is incredible. I mean, this Villa team has got basically 13, 14 players, and look what they do.
Just one more thing on what we saw from Newcastle in that first half. Shame that Tonali goal didn't go in. That would have been blooming. It was fantastic. If you haven't seen it, try and find it somewhere. The individual skill involved was just sensational.
I didn't know he could dribble.
I know.
And that was in that first minute, wasn't it? It was like right in the beginning. So yeah, I mean, they had their chances. These games can go different ways, right? As you mentioned, Emi Martinez, 2 incredible saves, and you know, Anthony Gordon on that left-hand side. If he learns how to cross the ball with his left foot, maybe Newcastle would have won that game. Really, really frustrating watching him today.
Yeah, frustrating, I think, is a good way to describe Newcastle's season. Obviously doing fine in the Champions League, but there have been too many games where you just feel that they haven't turned up, or turned up as you would expect a team to be fighting for a Champions League place.
You know what it also is, and I don't know if it's just me, but I think the manager gets a lot of credit in the bank, doesn't he? I mean, it's kind of likable.
Because he's English, darling, that you see we get credit, Janis.
Likable figure. I think very good managers. I think the players do like playing for him. That's clear to see over the years. But there is something maybe missing that, I don't know him personally as a manager. What does he do after losses like that? Is he as nice as he comes across? I don't know. But I think they need to have a talk, because you're quite right. St. James's, we talk about it a lot, but this season hasn't been a fortress for sure.
Is there any world in which you're Unai Emery and you're thinking, have I reached the glass ceiling here at Villa? And if someone at Old Trafford gives me a call, I'll be thinking, look, I know I have to take a drop down initially, but I'm going to have the funds to be able to put together a real team to take us forward.
I think he's thinking the only reason I say no is because I think most people know that he runs the shop at Villa, which you're not going to get. We see it in Maresca.
Yeah, that's true.
We see it with Manchester United. I memean, he's a one-man band. He decides who comes, who goes, and he's a little bit like Sir Alex Ferguson was at Manchester United. So, the American ownership is going to have to give him some money, right? They've had issues, obviously, with the PSR. I don't know when that ends. Then that's not my cup of tea to know exactly how much money they need to buy, sell, and all that. But I think he'll be frustrated, because he understands if he can do so much with this squad, right? Then just imagine if he was able to buy, say, 3 or 4 key players in every formation. Then you can legitimately say that he's got a shot, and he goes out of his way, right? He says, well, we're not even top 5 team. And I don't know why he does that, but there is a message out there. And I think that's what you're insinuating with me.
Janis, I imagine with your millions, you don't need someone to shovel for you.
I thought that you were coming over, no? to help out.
Looking out the window. No one's going anywhere, mate. That is it. Of course, Arsenal against Arsenal, Manchester United will be our focus next. Thank you very much to Janis. We'll be looking back at that game, plus Barcelona in action at the moment against Real Oviedo. More reaction to what we've seen between Newcastle and Villa in that win for Chelsea on ESPN FC. That, of course, is live at the full-time whistle of Arsenal United.